In 1754, the French and Indian War began in North America. It was waged between the armies of England and France. The war lasted 9 long years, but with the help of American colonists, England was victorious. In 1763, France was forced to cede to England all of Canada and all of the Louisiana Territory east of the Mississippi. This victory was the culmination of the rise of England to the position of the strongest commercial and colonial power in the world. The year of 1763 also marks a change in British policy toward America, which led to the Revolution and, in turn, to an independent United States. The war had left England heavily in debt. The British Parliament proposed that a new source of revenue lay in taxing the people of the American colonies. To a considerable degree, the war had been fought for the benefit of the American colonies. The men in Parliament thought it just that the colonies be taxed to pay their share of the debt. The colonists were outraged. By being colonists, they were denied a representative voice in the British Parliament. They believed that taxation without representation was tyranny. In 1765, Parliament passed the Stamp Act. This put a tax payable to England on a variety of legal documents, newspapers, and even playing cards. In protest, the colonists refused to buy English-made goods, and the colonies petitioned King George III to repeal the act. The new law proved extremely difficult to enforce, so in 1766, the Stamp Act was repealed. But at the same time, Parliament passed the Declaratory Act, which gave itself the right to legislate for the colonies in all cases whatsoever. In 1767, Parliament passed the Townshend Acts, which imposed taxes on glass, paper, and tea. Anti-British sentiment grew, especially in Boston, Massachusetts. In 1768, the House of Representatives of Massachusetts Bay sent out a circular letter which urged the other colonies to become united in their protest against the Townshend Acts. In retaliation, the British government ordered the royal governors to dissolve any assembly that approved the letter. The Virginia House of Burgesses was dissolved after they passed resolutions which declared that they, and not Parliament, had the right to levy taxes on the colony. The Townshend Acts, like the Stamp Act before it, proved unenforceable and was soon repealed. Parliament, however, left the tax on tea to show its authority over the colonies. 2 regiments of British soldiers were sent to Boston to quell anti-British sentiment in the colony. They were constantly met with jeers and disaffection from the Bostonians. On March 5, 1770, a crowd had formed around the customs house and began to taunt the lone sentry at his post. Feeling threatened, the redcoat called for assistance. 8 more soldiers appeared on the scene. Without being ordered, the soldiers fired into the crowd. When the gun smoke cleared, 5 colonists were dead. Word spread of the Boston Massacre throughout the colonies, and hatred for the British grew stronger. In May of 1773, Parliament passed the British Tea Act. This gave a virtual monopoly to the British East India Company to sell their tea in the colonies. In November, the company's tea ships began to arrive in Boston's harbor, but the local dock workers refused to unload the cargo. The local British governor issued a deadline for the colonists to pay the tax on the tea. The date was set for December 16th at midnight. Bostonians gathered at the Old South Church to discuss the issue at hand. It was agreed, too, that action and not words were needed for England to take notice. Under the cover of darkness, Bostonians, disguised as Indians, boarded the tea ships and dumped every last chest of tea into Boston's harbor. The Boston Tea Party dealt a mighty blow to the authority of the British government. In retaliation, Parliament passed the Coercive Acts, better known as the Intolerable Acts. Under this new law, the port of Boston was closed, and Massachusetts was placed under military control. This in turn outraged the other colonies, and they rallied together to show their support for Massachusetts. In the fall of 1774, delegates from the colonies met at Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This gathering became known as the First Continental Congress. Peyton Randolph, Speaker of the Virginia House of Burgesses, was elected president. Other notable members included John and Samuel Adams of Massachusetts, and Richard Henry Lee, Patrick Henry, and George Washington of Virginia. The Congress condemned the intolerable acts, approved the arming of local militias, and agreed on boycotting all British goods. After being in session for 7 weeks, the Congress adjourned and agreed to redress any unresolved grievances the following spring. In March of 1775, a Virginia convention was held in Old St. John's Church in the city of Richmond. Believing that war with Britain was inevitable, Patrick Henry urged his fellow Virginians to take up arms. "I know not what course others may take," he said, "but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." In April of 1775, British troops were sent to Massachusetts to destroy the arms and ammunition at Concord and capture Patriot leaders who were in Lexington. A silversmith named Paul Revere rode on horseback through the dead of night to warn his fellow colonists that the British were coming. On April 19th, British troops and volunteer militiamen exchanged gunfire at the Battle of Lexington and Concord. This was the beginning of the Revolutionary War, the War for American Independence.